Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming this evening. We begin our meeting with the open forum. This is a time that we've set aside for community comment. And I have one person who would like to come forward, Amy Nelson. Yeah. Get the big desk with the mic.
Good evening. My name is Amy Nelson, and I have a daughter at Jeffers Pond and a son at Twin Oaks. Tonight, I'm not here speaking only on behalf of my child's needs, but representing those of over 60 members of the Dyslexia Advocates for the Prior Lake Savage area schools. We are a group of parents and educators that see a system that is not working for our children, and for many more that are not yet diagnosed nor receiving appropriate supports within the multi-tier support structure currently used. We are a branch of Decoding Dyslexia of Minnesota, part of a nationwide organization to promote awareness, education, and resources. October is Dyslexia Awareness Month, so right in line with the recent focus in District 719 on improving literacy at our schools, it is important to address all areas that are contributing to the widening achievement gap. Dyslexia is a learning disability characterized by difficulty reading due to problems identifying speech sounds and relating those sounds to letters and words. Additionally, other components also include dysgraphia, a written disorder associated with poor handwriting and spelling, and dyscalculia, the inability to comprehend and manipulate numbers. Most often, people with dyslexia have normal to above normal intelligence, making it harder to identify them within a classroom. For our son, who was unable to write and spell basic words, despite years of intervention and low test scores, our diagnosis was not made until late in 5th grade from outside of the district. Unfortunately, this is not only our experience, but the same for many parents in 719, represented here tonight. These disorders are common, with science showing that 1 in 5 to 10 children have varying degrees of dyslexia. This is equivalent to about 50 to 100 students per elementary school, and up to 20% of students in the Prior Lake Savage schools. To put this in perspective, autism affects 2% of our student population, about 1 in 52. Dyslexia, 1 in 5 to 10 students, far more common. Our district employs 2 full-time autism specialists. District 719 employs 0 dyslexia specialists. For current students in grade 7 and down, they have only been taught balanced literacy, the style of District 719's current curriculum for English and language arts. Scientific evidence shows that only 35 to 40% of all learners respond to balanced literacy curriculums. I work in medicine, so I use science to determine what works best to treat my patients. I don't claim to be a teacher nor a curriculum specialist, but again, science shows that the best curriculum for all learners is not balanced literacy. It is evidence-based, systematic, structured literacy programs. This is important for all students, but essential for grades K through 5 to establish a strong foundation for later learning. Currently, in order for most students with dyslexia and other specific learning disabilities to get this structure, an outside-of-school tutor trained in structured literacy is our only saving grace. Why should parents need to take their students outside of the district to learn to read? What about parents that cannot afford private tutors or don't know there is an option available to teach their students the basic right to read? This has to change. This is an urgent need. We know that surrounding districts, many of which were referenced in comparison to 719 at last meeting's presentation, have already made the switches to structured literacy as a response to their students' needs. We know that District 719 tops comparative districts in multiple areas. However, as referred to in the presentation at the September 23rd school board meeting, in order to reverse the significant declines and widening achievement gap in recent test scores, we need better. A change is what we need to best support all readers and writers. To achieve this, we need a few things. We need evidence-based interventions in the multi-tier structured supports that include not a specific brand of curriculum, but a systematic, structured-based curriculum, scientifically proven not to help dyslexic learners only, not to help just struggling readers and writers, but this helps all students become better readers and writers. Professional learning for teachers, specialists, and staff to provide early screening for dyslexia as required by Minnesota State Statute 125A by July of 2020. Continued professional learning for K-5 teachers and reading specialists to best support all struggling readers and writers within the district. Number 4, trained dyslexia specialist employed by the district to provide structured interventions for students identified with specific learning disorders like dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. It is important to know that if a student is not reading at grade level by 3rd grade, they only have a 25% chance of meeting their grade level expectations at all. We appreciate the goal. The SKIP goal is set at 80% of students are at reading proficiency by 2020 for all students. Let's set all of our students up for success by addressing the above mentioned areas. We ask that you make structured literacy and supports a top priority to support the district mission to educate all learners to reach their full potential as contributing and productive members of our ever-changing community. When we know better, we can do better. We welcome you to any of our meetings to learn more about the effects of dyslexia and other learning disorders in our schools and communities. And we also have some information with us tonight if anybody would like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Someone from the administration will get back to you. I have your contact information up here. And if you'd like to leave a few brochures, you can give them to Martha or leave them out on the desk and she'll pick them up. Thank you. We'll go to roll call. All are present except Mary Franz and Jeff Holmberg. And before we approve the agenda, I'd like to make a slight change. Item 10B will be removed from the agenda this evening. It has to do with the Minnesota High School League Co-op request. So do I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
By Melissa, second.
Second.
By Enrique. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. On our consent, on our consent agenda this evening, these are items that are routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion with no separate discussion. And they include our financials, the check wire transfer disbursement summary, the wire transfer, EFT, and ACH banking activity, bank reconciliation statements for August 2019, building bond investment reports for the 2018A report and the 2018B report, monthly wire detail, monthly health dental wire detail, monthly check detail, and monthly ACH detail. The approval of school board minutes on September 9th, 2019 and September 23rd, 2019. The personnel list, personnel items, our resignations, terminations, and non-renewals as listed. The candidates for employment, which are in your packet. Leaves of absence as listed. The 2019-20 district curriculum advisory membership roster, and the assurance of compliance report, which is approved annually. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So made.
By Stacy, second.
Second.
Jonathan, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Now we'll move on to the resolution for the acceptance of gifts. And we have gifts from Alina Health, Charities and Aid Foundation, Best Buy Employee Giving Program, Patrons of the Arts and Activities, Westwood PTC, Prior Lake Savage Optimist Club, Prior Lake Lions Club, Prior Lake VFW, and Harold Hurwitz. Do I have a motion to accept the donation of gifts?
So made.
By Michael, second by Melissa. Any comments or questions? Okay, this is a roll call vote. Enrique?
Aye.
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 Suzie?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And that motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Backwards.
Now we'll move on to Laker Pride. Dr. Salo?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see a full house again. We have a couple of really exciting Laker Pride and recognition presentations. So I'd like to start, first of all, by inviting Darcy Rose and Michelle Zherk up. They are the co-chairs of the Prior Lake Rotary Music Fest, who we have partnered with for many years. The Rotary Club at Prior Lake has been an amazing support to our school district in a variety of ways. And certainly this partnership with the Music Fest is definitely one of them. Not only a fun event for our entire community, but an amazing event for the support that it provides and the opportunities that it provides our students. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to the two of you.
Thank you, Terry. We're excited to be here tonight. This year we celebrated our 10th annual Music Fest, and we had a record number of attendees and a record number of for our fundraisers. So we're excited tonight to present to the LABC PTA or PAA and PTCs a check for approximately $36,232 for you guys.
We just want to thank the participation that we get from the LABC, the PAA, and the PTCs. I don't know that we could do this without all of your support. You sell tickets for us. You give us thousands of hours of volunteer throughout the 10 years. And we really, really appreciate your efforts to help us so we can help you.
This morning, we announced, one of our big goals was to announce our acts as soon as possible so we can get as much help selling tickets. So Country Night is, this coming year, 2020, is heading up with Lady A. This morning we announced our opening act, and then tomorrow morning we're announcing another big headliner that's gonna work with Lady A. So, and then this year also, I can't tell you.
Not fair.
Can't tell you. Just teasing. And then Rock Night is signed and we'll be announcing soon. This year, one of our goals was to help our nonprofits raise more money. So our nonprofits will be selling tickets earlier than ever, November 1st. So we're excited about that.
Again, thank you very much. That was a very good anticipatory set, is what we call that in educational jargon.
Serious tease.
Thank you.
102 is going to announce it tomorrow morning.
Okay, what time? 7:20. Okay. Already got that? We will be
And it'll be
listening.
on Facebook right after.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, please know how much we appreciate the Rotary, everything that you do, and you continuing to support our kids in so many ways, and especially with these funds that will do great things for them. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
And please know that on behalf of the school district, tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock at Rotary, I'll also be thanking the entire club for this amazing donation. I'd now like to invite our first teachers, besides parents, first teachers in our school district of our kids. We've got our early learning team with us today that are going to share some information about a grant that they received from the Department of Minnesota and the Minnesota Center of Excellence for Young Children with Disabilities called the Family Guided Routine-Based Intervention Innovation. So we've got our birth to 3 early intervention team right now. Lori Parker, it looks like you are going to be kicking things off for us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. As Terry mentioned, we are the first introduction to many families in our district in that we serve students that are birth to 3 and their families. We have a team. There's a small picture of us. We, as you know, keep continuing to grow as the rest of the district does. I have Denise Melander. She is an occupational therapist that works with our birth to 3 students. Maggie Golddaddy, she works as an early childhood special ed teacher with our birth to 3 students and is also early childhood special ed and Loyola Del Lago lead teacher for special ed. We have Lisa Murray, who is another ECSE teacher, and Anna Frost and Julie Smith are our speech language pathologists that work with this population of students. Get used to new technology. As a result of this presentation, I hope that you can know why we have a birth to 3 team, who serves our littlest and our biggest learners in the district, and where those services are provided. See that relationships matter starting at the very, very beginning before students are even coming into our buildings, and learn about the eQuip innovation, which is, you'll find out a little bit more about in a bit, and feel positive about the future of these programs. This ties directly right into our mission of educating all learners to reach their full potential as contributing and productive members of our ever-changing global community.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of background about what our services are. It's such a privilege to be able to speak with you today. So often we worry that people don't even know we exist. So here we are, and what we are is Part C of the federal mandate to serve all students and families, and that started in 1986. So when that started, what people did to bring these services to families was almost bring therapy into homes. So the way that you qualify to be part of our services is if you're showing a delay in one area of development. Another thing would be that if you have one of hundreds of medical issues that are happening, that would show that you might have a delay sometime in the next 3 years. And a third way that we serve kids is by just having an informed clinical opinion that what parents are telling us matters and that we can help them now so that it's not an issue later on down the road. So we're moving right now as a team, we're moving from this old therapy model of bringing toys and services and equipment into homes to just do a quick snap of service with kids to really knowing what's happening in kids' lives as it's happening. So whether it be nap time, snack time, playtime outside, we're looking at what that is and then providing services as coaching families and parents to do those things on a daily basis with their children.
Where have we been? We have shown since the 2017-2018 school year 30% growth in the number of assessments that we're doing in this population of students and also the students that we're qualifying. The impact and accountability we have is also from our national and state legislatures that are pushing us to show greater accountability and functional outcomes for this population of students. I included a more recent study that came up at our Early Childhood Special Ed Leadership Conference last week that really emphasized that the greater amount of intensity we're providing at this level, it really leads to those functional outcomes that we see down the road as they move into our schools. How do we address this? Maggie kind of touched on it a little bit, and I'll let her talk a little bit more about it. Or Denise, sorry.
So early intervention supports the child as well as their family. If you think about us coming in for a 1-hour home visit, it might be once a week, once a month, it could be a couple times a month. That amount of time is vastly less than a caregiver's amount of hours with their children. And so us coaching and teaching them about how their child is learning and developing really helps them provide that rich support throughout all of their daily activities, routines, in and out of the home. And when a child does qualify for our service, what we will do is pick a primary service provider from our team, and it's usually made up of either an early childhood special education teacher, speech language pathologist, or an occupational therapist, and you're designated to that child and their family or caregivers to support them, build rapport, really get to know their child and how to help them figure out next steps. And they're the experts on their child, so it's a lot of collaboration and talking, and have you tried this, and how do you know when it's working, and what do you do when it's not? And then other people that we consult with would be related services such as physical therapy, teacher of visually impaired, audiology, teacher of deaf and hard of hearing. And if you think about where we're going to provide service, it's not always in the home. That's often where we end up, but it can be at daycare, could be at a park, it could be at ECFE, it could be a restaurant, grocery store, wherever they might be having challenges or want more support.
So the pictures that you see on the TV right now are some of the families that have been taking part in our innovation with us that we're going to show you a little bit more about. So right now, we're stepping into year 2 of a 5-year innovation where we're growing in our practices year by year. And so families sign off that they'd be okay for us to videotape ourselves in their homes so that we can go back and reflect on our coaching practices and coach one another to improve our practices. So these are some of the families, and then now, let's see. We're going to show a video that has clips of learning that has happened as a result of our coaching model. It says request access. About this.
Worse for you than it is for us.
No pressure, right? Oh, no, I have to do PLSAS.
It's a good video.
It'll be worth the wait. Okay, try one more time.
Go to the next. Okay. I can,
Do you want me to log back in?
sure.
Okay. Okay, where are you?
I can skip forward.
Okay, like that. That's right? Okay.
In this slide. So this is just a visual to show what the phases are for our 5-year implementation. So we were in the exploration phase. We've been in the installation phase now in year 2. And we have the centers of excellence. We have a coach, an internal coach helping us move from phase to phase. And then here's some of our data from our first year of implementation. We have benchmarks of quality that we're tracking. So having staff buy-in, family engagement, program-wide action plan, which we did not have over our last year, but we now will have going into the fall. Building staff capacity, monitoring our implementation and our outcomes, and then the growth of our overall implementation. So I just would highlight that our family engagement was part of our learning team goal last year, and that's one of the areas that really improved. And then as I mentioned, we videotape ourselves out on home visits, and then we come back and we reflect on them. And so we have this key indicator data that we also look at. Are we taking these 5 steps within each visit? Are we setting the stage for what's going to happen that day? Providing observation and opportunities for practice, problem solving, and planning with parents, having time for reflection and review. So when we started last year, we had 4 of 5 primary service providers that were videotaping and collecting data on this. In the spring, there were 3 of 5, and now heading into the fall, we have 6 out of 6 primary service providers. Did you share the video? Can I hop back? Okay. Our last slide is just showing a little bit of our give and get. So statewide, there are different teams throughout different districts that are participating in this. So we get together statewide if you've signed on for this, and we present to each other on what we've tried and what we're doing and sharing tools and everything. So that was kind of the end of that. And we'll end with our fun video. I'm very confident that this is going to happen, right? Refresh this.
I think we will need to email it out.
Just send it out. Okay.
That would be great. Well, thank you
Thank you.
very much for your work.
To it.
Thank you for ensuring that we're building those relationships and starting out with our
Thank you for
families.
supporting us and accessing the innovation that really gives us that support and training and financial support to do that, too. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, personnel item. Jim Quera.
Good evening, Superintendent Stallo, Board Chair, Board members. I'm pleased to present to you with my recommendation for approval of the 2018-2020 inaugural paraeducator contract for Prior Lake Schools. As you know, this has been a long road for them, and a few bumps in the road, a lot of factors involved here, but we were able to get a ratified agreement, and I know some of them are here tonight, and a lot of work has been put on this, so we recommend approval.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the first ever paraeducational agreement approval for 20, what is it?
So moved.
18-20?
Second.
By Jonathan, second by Melissa. Is there any comments or discussion? Okay, seeing none? Oh,
I just wanted to thank everyone. I think this is a big step forward for moving our paras into, the place that they should be within our district and recognizing them for that. So I think it's a great move to going forward.
any other comments? I would echo the same, so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Move on to unfinished business, facilities, planning, and construction. We have an update this evening, or is it just the Greenwood?
It's just Greenwood.
Greenwood, okay.
Yep. Good evening.
Not just, but Greenwood.
Yes. Good evening, Chair Schemick, School Board, Dr. Stallo. Have a quick presentation on the progress of the Greenwood remodel and Julie, I get this thing into 1 second, please. I'm sorry. There we go. I got it.
It's because you got up.
Good click, good click.
Yeah. So we're going to go, much like all the other projects, there's a big design feature to Greenwood, and it is primarily a mechanical upgrade, but there's also some remodeling and some additional construction in that space. So the construction project overview is media center renovation, kindergarten classroom renovation, kitchen and cafeteria expansion, receiving a boiler room renovation, and community education office renovation. The Gantt chart is we're starting to see a lot of the gray fall away, and it's amazing to think of all the work all the way back to 18 that is going on, and already we're getting close to 20. So a lot of work. This is just a bird's eye view of Greenwood. It's a 1950s building. A lot of mechanical systems are old and dated, and so they need some refreshing, and there will be some additions and renovations, as I'll show you in just a second. This is a kind of a print scan of the media center. Actually, this is, yes, media center. So typically, right now, see if I can work this. Oh, sorry. If you've been through Greenwood, you know that the media center, like most of that building, is hallways and classrooms coming off. The idea is to open up the media center to give it more of a collaboration type space. And here's a rendering of what that could look like. Another shot. So very similar to a lot of the features we're trying to incorporate in all of the buildings. It'd be a huge add for this building. Kindergarten classroom renovation. Again, the plan view, we would add the non-highlighted room would be a kindergarten room. And typically in a kindergarten room, we add a bathroom, but in this case, if we were to add a bathroom, we would be taking away one of the very few for the staff. So there are bathrooms up here for the other kindergarten rooms, and this classroom will use that room as well. Kitchen is, now we're getting into some addition and a lot more renovation. So as you can see, we're adding quite a bit of space to the servery, and the kitchen stays pretty much the same, a little bit of an expansion. We're adding some wash areas, receiving and a boiler room on second floor. So currently, the boiler room is downstairs in the dungeon, and I mean, they're just two monster boilers. We don't need those anymore, so we're able to move those upstairs. Here's another rendering of the cafeteria. And then community education office renovation. You can see from this bird's eye view that it is where the curved sidewalk will be to your left. Interior, again, this is the old special ed area in Greenwood, and we'll take that area plus 2 classrooms to accommodate community ed when we move them over there. Just some more, possible configurations of the office area. Some more renderings of community ed. You can see there's large classroom space, a smaller classroom or conference space, office for the director and other directors. Kind of another view. And again, primarily this, a big part of this job is a full mechanical upgrade, and it's pretty extensive. It's, but there's a lot of what I would call sizzle in this one too. I mean, it's going to be a nice building when we're done. Refresh it. It's, a lot of the finishes are old and tired, and so we're looking at really sprucing that building up. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions from the board? Stacy?
In the community ed space, Jim, is that similar to the amount of square footage we have now for them? I mean,
Yeah, I believe it's over what they have now.
is it? Okay. So classroom-wise, because, I mean, I'm assuming that's where they'll have their classroom, you know, like they do their driver's ed, like that stuff that they would normally do here? They're
They
gonna do there?
typically don't, the nice part is they'll have a dedicated classroom to have those
Right.
classes during the day, where right now they don't.
They just have, whatever's open, kind of thing.
They have a
Okay.
conference room here, but a lot of those rooms are currently being used by other programs, and so it's difficult for them to have class during the day, so they, this will be really nice for community ed to have that space.
So it's dedicated there?
It is dedicated.
They
Okay.
actually will have more space.
Okay. That's, I wanted to make sure of that. Okay.
And this was presented to Fleur Berto
yep.
Buildings meetings, so. Discussion.
And the plan
exciting.
is for next fall,
For next fall.
to be done? Okay.
To be done.
To be done.
Be done.
And so will the majority of this work happen over the summer?
Yes.
Okay.
The kitchen area might not be done by the next fall. So the cafeteria area would be, but we may have to do a little work yet for the next month after school starts.
Okay.
So we may be sharing cafeteria space until we can get the actual kitchen portion done.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
We'll move on to new business, budget and enrollment. Julie? You got a few things here.
Good evening, Chair Schimick, board members, Dr. Stallo. We do have Jeff Seeley back again from Ehlers and Associates to talk about the results of the sale of the bonds on Thursday. We did have a very positive result, but I'll let Jeff discuss it. And if you have questions, just let me know. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. And we have the sale, the refunding bonds to talk about. As you know, I was here September 9th, I believe it was, and we discussed the refunding of your 2010A bonds. And now you have a resolution in front of you, which is basically ratifying the award. As you know, that last resolution was a parameters resolution because today the markets are closed. It's a federal holiday. So we actually took bids Thursday. And the bids were well within the parameters that you established. and it was signed off on at that time. Now, you will be acting on a ratifying resolution to ratify it. So, if you recall, we talked about the 2010A. You had 3 maturities for about $11.5 million. So not a long refunding as far as only have three years left, but a decent principal amount. And we did receive 8 bids on it, so there's a lot of interest for the bonds. The low bid was 1.2%. So it was an excellent result. The principal amount was $10,640,000, and the underwriter took $2,666 as a fee, so a very low fee actually. They offered a premium of $920,000. Now, a premium is when they give you money up front, and the reason they do that is they actually give you money up front to make up for a little higher interest rate. It makes them easier for them to sell because an investor wants to earn a higher interest, and that interest they earn is tax exempt, so it's a benefit for them to pay a little more than face value of the bond in order to get a higher rate of return on the interest rate. What that does is it generates additional money that the underwriter gives you up front. So we take that into consideration as well as the rate. So the yield, which is the actual interest that you will pay taking the premium into account, is 1.8 to 1.2% depending on that maturity. Your future value savings was $608,000. So the true interest cost was lower than the presale, what we discussed before. It was 1.2, just shy of 1.21. We discussed the 1.39. And the refunding savings was $608,000, up from about $550,000 that we discussed. You have 3 years, that's about $200,000 worth of savings, and those are taxpayer savings. Again, this is not extra money that you have that you can spend. It's a direct reduction for property taxes. So to take a look at it on the attachment, page 1, here's a list of all the bidders that you had. JP Morgan Securities was the winning bid with the 1.206. You also had RBC from New York, BOK from Milwaukee, Hilltop Securities from Dallas, Texas, FTM Financial from Memphis, Tennessee, Mizero from Chicago, Hutchaki from Chicago, and Baird from Milwaukee. So you drew a lot of interest. By the way, we rarely see West Coast underwriters. It might have something to do with the time zones, but rarely do we see those. A lot of Midwest and South. So taking a look at this, on attachment page 3, you have your prior debt service. This is the old bonds that will be refunded. And you can see your principal payments there, coupon or interest of 4.0%. The next page is the new bonds. So if we go to page 5, this is a savings. It shows each year in roughly $200,000 of savings each year for a total of $608,000 in savings, which is about 4.8% present value savings. So very nice results. The last thing in here is if you want to read about how Moody's rated you, we always include this in the sale day report, just in case you're having trouble sleeping at night and you want to read about your rating. So you have a resolution. Any questions for me?
First, I'll take a motion. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution ratifying the sales of the general obligation school building refunding bonds?
So made.
By Stacy, second.
Second.
By Enrique. Now do you have any questions?
I think
Not
Great
sure-
results.
Yeah, not sure how this could be a better result.
Awesome, yeah. Better than we had hoped for, so that's
Yep.
great.
So we have lease next?
If
All right.
there's no other comments, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
Is it roll
Oh,
call?
it's roll
I was
call.
kind of wondering
Yep.
about that.
And I even wrote that down too. Michael?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 6-0. Thank you. You're again?
Yeah, I'm up again, yes. So we are bringing you the results of the lease renegotiation, if you will, with Capital One. And you have a resolution in front of you that executing a lease agreement, the ground lease, and related documents with Capital One public funding. We reviewed this at the September 9th board meeting also. With a lease, you only have one resolution. You did not have to do an authorizing resolution back then. And at the end of it, I do have a document that I need the chair to sign. I have to take with me. By the way, on this and the bonds, there's a whole folder of signatures that you can do after the meeting. So the 2013 lease agreement you entered into with Capital One, and that was for your high school addition. And we looked at refunding that because it carried a little higher interest rates. Rates have come down since then. And we looked at issuing the COPs, or certificates of participation. There was one issue with it, if you recall. There was a penalty clause for early termination or repayment of that lease. So that was 3%, which added up to about $196,000. So pretty significant penalty. With negotiations with Capital One, they said if you negotiate a refunding with us, we would waive that. So that is what we did with the direction from the district. And the interest rate is 2.75. It was 4.45. So it reduced your payments by just shy of $66,000 per year for fiscal years 21 through 34. So a long extended period of time. It was just shy of 10% present value savings, total savings of $920,000. So if you take a closer look at it, we'll go to the page 3. This is the prior original debt service. These are your lease payments that we will be refunding. The next page, and you can see the 4% interest rate there. The next page is the new lease that you will be taking on after November 7th. That's when we're closing on this. And then the last page, which is the main page, is your savings. So you can see $920,000 worth of savings, $65,000 from 2021 through 2034. Again, this is savings directly for the taxpayers.
Do I have a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the execution of a
So
lease
made.
agreement? Let me finish.
Touched a word.
Just because you, agreement, I guess that's it. By Jonathan.
You done?
Second, yeah, second.
So made.
Second.
By Enrique. Any questions?
Second was by Michael.
Enrique, I heard Enrique.
Oh, he did.
Sorry. Any questions?
I just make a comment. I think it's great. We keep saving money for the taxpayers, so keep going.
$1 million in interest.
Add my thanks to Ehlers, to Julie, Sink, to the business office. This is just great work that we continue to do on behalf of our community. So thank you. Thanks, Julie.
All those in favor, it's a roll call. Michael?
Aye. Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Enrique?
Aye.
That motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and
You need it right now.
your signature on this. The rest of them, you can take your time on it.
I think we're getting ready for the audit if you want to.
Sign, name, title.
So not on the top.
Great. Be here a while. Oh, sure.
They're rushing me anyway, so that's okay.
Usually he's got
I'm
like
usually
a whole
rushing
bunch
you.
of pens. She just says one letter at a
Do you want
time.
to stand?
I don't like stamps. There you go. Thank you very much for your work.
Thanks.
Audit.
Audit.
So I have two additional gentlemen here tonight to discuss the audit. Dennis Hugavine and John Lorenzini They both work closely with the district on the audit, and so I will let them present the results from the audit from the 2018-19 school year.
Thank you for having us. I was here about 3 weeks ago or so for your work session, and I like doing the work sessions because it feels like a little more informal and we can have some discussion back and forth. So we spent a good 45 minutes or so going through the audit results in detail. So we're not going to do that level of detail tonight. But we always want to start by thanking the people who do the heavy lifting. So we work a lot with Michelle, of course, and Andrea, and Julie, of course, as well. So we appreciate all the hard work that the finance team puts into the audit, and it really involves a lot more people than just the business office. Certainly food service and community ed and buildings and grounds, and everybody gets in on the action. So our goal in having an audit every year is to represent the school board truly. We constantly emphasize with our staff that we are the eyes and ears of the school board. We have to look for things that you would find helpful, insightful, meaningful to protect the interests of the school board. And we always constantly pound that into our staff's thinking every time. So tonight what we're doing is presenting the CAFR. The school district puts together a comprehensive annual financial report. The acronym is CAFR. You're holding yourself to a higher standard than you would have to. It's got a lot of great historical information in there in the statistical section. It's got a transmittal letter that is a great opportunity to talk about all the great initiatives the school district has going on. So that's 144 pages for the CAFR, if anybody read through that. And then there's a single audit and student activity report. We pull that out because you're filing a CAFR, and the CAFR program is not interested in those aspects of it, so it's bound under a separate cover because you expended more than $750,000. And that'll be the last separate student activity audit, but John will talk a little bit more about that, I believe. And then the executive audit summary is our communication from you as or us as the auditing firm to you as a school board, things that we hope you find easy to read, insightful, important commentary regarding legislative changes that are coming down the line. And we really want you to use that as a resource during the year as you're doing your budget updates and things like that, and have it be a go-to place for information regarding how things, that the legislature does specifically manifest themselves into budget development and things. So that's totaling up 190 pages. That's a lot of information. We're not going to go through it in any detail, like I said, but to the extent you have questions or comments on any of those 190 pages, don't hesitate to let us know. John's going to walk us through a number of different ways that the audit was impacted and what those results were.
All right. Yeah, so as Dennis said, I'll just real briefly go over some audit results here. So our audit opinion, this is what you hire us for. We issued what's known as an unmodified audit opinion. That's a clean audit opinion. It means that the financial statements are in accordance with accounting requirements and there were no material misstatements. So that is great to report. The Yellow Book compliance findings. So there were no Yellow Book compliance findings. This would be anything like non-compliance with laws, regulations, anything like that. We would be required to report to you as governance, and there's no findings like that this year. Internal controls. So also as part of our audit, as part of planning our audit procedures, we walk through the district's internal control procedures, reviews, checklists, everything like that that the district has to make sure that, there's two sets of eyes on things, there's segregations of duties. We go through all of that, and if there's a finding, we report that to you as governance. So we only had one finding which is considered a material weakness, and that is the drafting of the financial statements, which is the same as prior years. That's just a consistent finding with prior years. But other than that, there were no material weaknesses in the district's internal controls, which is great to report. As Dennis mentioned, we also performed for you a single audit, which is a special compliance audit for federal money. And there's a lot of rules for how we choose what program we're going to test. But we ended up testing the district's special education program. And we're happy to report that there were no findings in that program. I'm sure you remember from last year, we did have a finding with some expenditures related to cell phone allowances, and the district has cleaned that up. Julie and Michelle got right on top of that. So there were no such findings this year, which is great to report. Moving on to Minnesota legal compliance, the state auditor issues a really long checklist of all the different types of Minnesota statutes that apply to school districts. And as part of our audit, we go through that checklist with Michelle and Julie, and we look at documents and ask a lot of questions. And if there's any findings, we report them, and there were no findings this year, which is great. As Dennis mentioned, we also do audit the student activity funds. And we did have one legal compliance finding related to those, and it was just a situation where a student activity fund paid a contractor directly. I think it was for a 5K run. There was like a athletic trainer, I think it was, and that's actually prohibited. It's supposed to run through the district, which is kind of a strange loophole, but it's not something you'll have to worry about going forward now that student activity funds are under board control. So just kind of a quirky little thing that you won't have to worry about anymore going forward. Also this year, I wanted to mention there were no new accounting standards. It doesn't seem very often we can say that, but there were no new accounting standards implemented this year. But I did want to make you aware that GASB 84 and GASB 87 are both on the horizon. Student activity funds, that's GASB 84, that'll be coming up this next fiscal year, and then the lease standard the year after that. And we've already been in communication with Julie and Michelle about that lease standard, and they're, I know, going through all of your lease records and getting ready for that standard as well. There were no uncorrected misstatements to the financial statements, and we had no disagreements with management to report.
In both of those instances, if we had disagreements or difficulty in performing our audit, we would be required to tell you that. In terms of one of the, John just mentioned that we had a unusual year where GASB hadn't issued any new pronouncements. But I would say, apart from that even, I'd say it's one of the smoothest audits that we've had in terms of streamlined from beginning to end. It just was very, very smooth, and I think that's just, you know, the dedication of your staff and continuity of your staffing, continuity of our staffing. It was just a really, really good year to experience that, and partly, a small part of it was not having any new GASB pronouncements, I'm sure. In terms of the actual audit results, this is just a graph that looks at your student enrollment over the last 5 years. This is just showing the proportion of the different grade levels, you know, elementary versus secondary and kindergarten and things like that. And as we all know, the kids don't always show up exactly where the capacity is of your buildings and things like that. So certainly as you've experienced significant growth from 2015 to 2019, it manifests itself in needing additional capacity and things like that. But this graph isn't breaking it out, but there's another graph in the executive audit summary that I find really interesting, in that of the 8815 average daily membership served for 2019, 8,815, your resident student count was only 8,399. So you had 686 students opting out of the district, but you had 1,101 opting in. And so that's how you get to that net 8815. So that's really good, solid indicator of, you know, offering programming that parents are choosing to have for their kids. You're doing a great job of attracting enrollment and things like that, which certainly has consequences in terms of funding that it brings in with those kids and things like that. In terms of the 5-year historical trends of the district, you can see, looking in that first column, 2015, it's a lot of money, $77 million, but you just are short of the 100 million mark as of 2019. So I would say over those 5 years, we've been the auditor for all of those years, so we can say with confidence it's been a well-managed growth. That's a significant amount of growth to absorb in terms of the consequences for staffing and what you're expecting people to do in terms of accounting and their workloads and things like that, but you've managed it well. Like I said, this was probably the smoothest audit that we've had in those years. Again, historically, I told you this at the work session as well, but you've got well-managed outcomes in terms of that having that kind of a growth, but being thoughtful enough to say, as you're growing, being able to put aside resources to plan for that future and to open up new sites and things like that. So you can see the unassigned fund balance went from 7% in 2015, ended at about 11.19 at the end of 2019. And I do realize That's just looking at the unassigned category. I think as a board, when you adopt your budget, you also include the assigned category in that same number. But very, very positive outcomes, very well managed, and a significant amount of growth over those years. This is looking specifically at the general fund revenues over those same 5 years. The tax shift impact, again, we talked about it at the work session, but the last impact was 2014 when the state legislature brought back the tax shift that they use when the state's economy goes south and they take money away from school districts to operate on. So that's now off of there. So the most significant impact on this particular graph, I would say, is from 2018 up to 2019. You could see on the local property tax line, your voters in December of 2017 approved increase in the operating levy from $674 per pupil unit served to about $924. So again, the public is supporting you. They're supporting the things you're doing and recognizing that as the district continues to grow, you've got to have resources to make programming happen. So that's very positive to see. Over each of those 5 years that we're presenting there for the general fund, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty positive that actually over the last 10 years, the legislature's only given you a 2% improvement on the general ed formula for those 5 years. If it showed 10, I think that's what we would say as well. But for certainly for those 5 years, you've managed to get by up until the public approved the additional operating referendum in, like I said, 2017, but hit for the first time in 2019. Expenditures per student. This is not an intention of calculating or replicating the calculation that MDE does for the profiles numbers. They use a slightly different denominator for the number of students. This is just strictly the number of students served as it generated general ed aid. And so what I, again, find interesting is your curve is non-traditional in that from 2015, 16, and 17, it was, it wasn't the traditional curve that we see for most school districts in the state. You were able to manage the growth of that cost per student very well. In 2018 and 2019, primarily it's partly showing the impact of capital items that are starting to enter in. You got some significant capital projects that you're accomplishing, and then certainly with the additional resources that the public voted on, allowed you to expand additional positions and related benefits that went along with that. So that's what you're seeing there, but it's not exorbitant by any stretch of the imagination. You can see it's the last 3 years have been more the traditional, but the 3 years prior to that were not. If we compare your per student spending to both the 7-county metro area average and the statewide, and then for districts over 4,000, keep in mind that the apples to apples comparison for that particular graph is 2018. So for Prior Lake Savage area schools off to the right there, the middle column for 2018 is what you'd want to compare to. That's the most recent year that data is made available by the Minnesota Department of Education. So again, what I find interesting, as I think I pointed out in past years too, is even though as a district you've got less resources available, where you're choosing as a board to put those resources, you've got a higher instance of the percentage going to regular instruction and classroom-related instruction. So if you've got less resources available, it's always good to see that where you're choosing to put those lesser resources as a high percentage of the total available, more of your funding is going into regular instruction. For example, if you look at the regular instruction line, the 5201 under 2018, that represents 50.5% of your available dollars from the general fund. On the 7-county metro area average for that particular year, 2018, the 5976 represented about 48%. Just kind of gives you a sense. You've got 2.5% more going into that. In terms of one of the things caught my eye earlier, watching presentation of the community ed services facilities that you're building out. Community service really jumps out on this particular graph. This is one of those line items where when you have a per student cost that's significantly higher than those averages, that's a good thing because it's an indication of having programming that people are choosing to participate in. It's not driven by tax dollars or state aid or anything like that. For the most part, it's people participating with their dollars, so it's one of the rare times when you want to see a higher number than other surrounding school districts and things like that. So very positive sign that you're running a very successful general education program. I'm going to let John to wrap up the rest of the financial results.
Okay, looking at this next slide here, so this is looking at your general fund expenditures, and it's by object code, so type of expenditure, and it is just for across all the programs. You can see to the left, we've got your final amended budget, and right next to that is your actual, and then your over and under. And so overall, general fund expenditures came within 3% of your budget, and it was actually below your budget. And the largest variance, as you can see, was in capital expenditures, and that was, I think, simply due to the timing of the projects and, when the pay apps came in and things like that. Moving to the next slide here, so this is looking at Fund 2, at your food service operations, going back for the past 5 years. And you can see the blue bar there is revenue, the red is expenditure, and then the green is your fund balance. So revenues increased by 4.62% from prior year, and we're within 0.5% of budget, which is great to see. And expenditures increased by 9.5% and were 4.16% less than budget. So overall, you had budgeted for fund balance to decrease by $120,000, and it actually ended up increasing by $66,000. So you had a generally positive result there in that fund. And then operationally, this graph here shows your meals served. And this is lunches only, it's not breakfast, but you can see that your meals served decreased by 5,000, or just about 1%. And also, if you look at it's broken out by category here, and you can see that reduced meals were the only ones that increased from prior year. And if you look towards the bottom of this slide, you can also see we've put the percentage breakout of each type of meal served, and you can also see the increase in reduced meals there. All right, moving over to the Community Service Fund. So revenue in the Community Service Fund increased by 11% from prior year and was 4.3% higher than budget. And your expenditures in that fund increased by 7% and were 10% higher than budget. So overall, fund balance decreased by $24,000 more than budgeted. And looking at your fund balance as a percentage of annual expenditures, it was 11% is what you ended up at this year, and it was 16% in the prior year. So a slight decrease in your fund balance in the Community Service Fund there.
It is our distinct pleasure to work with the school district on your audit. We would be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any questions for us.
Are there any questions? We went over this pretty thoroughly in the work session, I believe, and most of our questions got answered, I think. Terry, did you?
Just a comment, I think we are accustomed to having results like this, clean audits and complimentary audit reporting, and that happens because our business office, Julie and her team, just do a fantastic job with this. So thank you for pushing us to be at our best, and Julie, thank you and your team for all you do.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the 2018-19 final audit?
So moved.
By Enrique, second?
Second.
By Michael. Any other comments or questions?
I'll just add on behalf of the board too, thank you to the business office and to your firm and your teamwork. It was lovely to hear that it was the smoothest year ever, and I can't even imagine the amount of work that's gone into this, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, and I will mention on the last slide here is our contact information, so if there's any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Enrollment. Julie?
So I think you have a paper copy. If not, I know there is one in the board packet. This is a 3-year enrollment look back.
Forgot about this one.
I just want to make sure that everyone understands that these are October 1 numbers. So if you're looking at our numbers compared to what the audit may say for end-of-year numbers, they are definitely going to look different because we're trying to compare beginning the same periods of time from year to year. So these are October 1 numbers for 2017-18, 2018-19, and 2019-20. And we've also tried to include in here, and the request was open enrollment by grade by school. And we also, and those for the 3 years are included, and by grade, totals by grade. We also are showing tuition students open enrolled out by grade. And then we're showing totals of our number of students attending private schools and homeschools. Now, we don't have that data by grade necessarily, but we do have the totals for each of those classifications, so that you as a board can see the total number of resident students that we have, how many are attending not only a non-public school, but also are homeschooled or maybe attending a private school.
Sorry, just a clarification on that, because this is the other question. So the private school, is that just our residents that are attend, or is it the total population?
It's just the residents, because, and the reason that you're not seeing the current year is because we're not required to report to us quite yet. But they'll give us October 1 numbers, but that reporting deadline we haven't met that deadline yet. So they're reporting to us our students.
Our resident students who are in their buildings.
Who are in their school.
Okay, so their actual total population could be different.
Could be different.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure.
That's a good clarification, thank you. So you're seeing all of that information here, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. One of the things that we've been kind of wondering why our kindergarten isn't as high as it has been in the past years, and I am seeing, or you're seeing it now as well, that we did see a slight bump in the number of open enrolled students out at the kindergarten level.
Are there any questions for Julie?
No, I mean, I would just say, I just kind of, when I was looking at this, I was trying to go from year to year and to see the progression, and, you know, from the most part, it looks like we have pretty much consistency in the numbers, in the sense of, you know, maybe there's one student that leaves or one that, you know, but there's not a real swing of any kind. It's fairly consistent all the way through.
It is fairly consistent.
Which is good, I think, as we try to project forward, there's that consistency.
Any other comments or questions?
A lot of data, thank you. Really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for putting it together. Easier to read.
This is quite we need the magnification on this.
Yeah, we're pinching.
Well, and you were able to do that on electronic, yes, definitely. I'm looking at it this way, so.
I do appreciate that it's on one sheet, so
Yeah.
you can really dig down. You can analyze very clearly difference between schools and different between columns, so thank you.
And I just want to make sure that you understand that the reason that there is a big difference between schools is we did close some schools to open enrollment. So you're going to see very few open enrolled students at, such as Red Tail Ridge, where we did not. When they were full, we did not add to that with open enrollment. And where we had needs or there was openings, that's where the students, we would place open enrolled students. And when I say we had needs, I meant like maybe we had unfriendly numbers in a grade level. So if third grade had, you know, either really high numbers or really low numbers, we were either able to add another teacher by adding more open enrolled students there, or increase that. So financially, it made some sense to have that class.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Personalized Flex Learning Day. Kevin?
Kevin and Jim.
Jim.
Sure, I can start. Good evening, Chair Chimick, board members, Superintendent Stallo. I'm proud to present the work that we've done related to Personalized Flex Learning Days overview today. And Executive Director Quirm is here with me as well to share some of the work as it relates to PLSCA and our staff. So we're really proud of the work our teachers are doing with personalized learning and advancing some of the work related to student achievement and personalized learning that you have seen in the Laker Learning Compass in last year and in recent meetings. What you will see today in the packet, both in the board memo and the personalized learning procedures overview, is an overview of a way to allow for us to provide a continuity of learning in the event of inclement weather. This has been developed by Assistant Superintendent Holmberg in collaboration with PLSEA leadership and with our teachers and administrative team as well. The large purpose, as I said, is to allow for that continuity in the case of one or multiple inclement weather days as we experienced last year. And you'll see some procedures outlined in both of these documents. I'll go through some highlights, and then I'm, of course, open to, as is Executive Director Querom, open to any questions that you may have. So in the event of an inclement weather day, the first day would be a snow day, and it would be off for students and teachers just as we have in the past. On the event of a second day, pending board approval of this plan and these procedures, we would implement a personalized flex learning day. And on a day like that, teachers and staff would use existing communication tools, including Seesaw and Schoology, to facilitate learning and communication with students and families. Those activities would be aligned with state standards, with learning activities and learning outcomes in the course or in the grade level. So we want these to be posted for students to complete by 9 a.m. of that day, and they would be posted online if students have the ability to access them online, but they may also be posted or accessed in other means if students do not have access. They could be completed in the same way, both online or on paper or by hand, depending on students' ability to complete the assignments online. And the expectations for staff is that they would communicate these learning activities on the district's LMS, Seesaw, or Schoology by 9 a.m. On that inclement weather day, and then facilitate communication and learning through district communication tools, including phone, email, and the LMS tools, and respond to student and family questions in a timely manner within 24 hours. These materials could be made available ahead of time in case students do not have access. So those materials could be sent home ahead of time on paper or via other means. And accommodations for students with 504s or individual education plans would be made. And those could include extra time or different activities. For students, the activities really revolve around accessing those learning activities through the LMS or on paper. They could have up to 5 days to complete and return the assignment, either again digitally or on paper or by hand. And if they return those assignments within that 5-day span, the day would not be counted as an absence. If they do not return those activities within the 5-day span, it would be counted as an absence. So some of this work has been piloted and tried in various areas. The high school has been working on some form of this during the assessment days for the past several years when they have the MCA and ACT on the same days. And we've worked really intentionally from the get-go with those days to make sure that learning isn't interrupted. So teachers make assignments or materials or resources available on Schoology, and students are expected to complete those by the time they return to school that next day. Bridges has also been working within a jump day framework so that students can complete work and align to state standards and course outcomes on those jump days so that they aren't necessarily always present in the building, but they are completing and advancing their learning using that structure. So we have had some experience in the district with some of these structures, and some of the teachers who've been involved in that work have been involved in the development of this framework and this overview as well.
Just a couple of things related to, you have to vote on this, right? So you should know, if you haven't looked at it, what needs to be in there and what you should be hearing from what Kevin's presentation and what's in there. So the state statute allows for school districts to have up to 5 e-learning days, inclement weather days, aka flex personalized learning. So there you can have 5 and it's counted as instruction. And due to inclement weather, a couple parts is it needs to be in consultation with their exclusive representative of the teachers, which you heard about, and it needs to be voted on by the board. So those are the things statutorily that you have to be aware of. And there's really 4 main things that you need to hear in the plan That's accommodations for students, both with disabilities or without access. Notification to parents and students of the plan. Access to teachers via district communication. And I covered 2 of them in one. So there's 4 parts there, and those are the things that you should be looking for in the plan as you are, considering our recommendation to approve this plan. So just wanted to make sure that you had that mindset as you looked at this.
Can I just a couple things before we take, when we're happy to take questions? I think one of the things, and this is something that many districts have been employing over the last couple of years. I'm really excited about working with our teachers and our administrators to implement our plan, because I think it really does empower the professionalism of our teachers and really say, instead of here's what we're all going to do, let's see where our students are during this time, what they need. And, there's certainly going to be things that we're going to have to figure out. I actually was with a group of Southwest Metro superintendents on Thursday at a meeting, and several of them have been implemented for the last couple of years. And no one, everyone said that there's not a program or a process that's perfect. But the alternative of missing 6 or 7 days and having learning interrupted, I'm really excited about us trying this. We will, so what the next steps are going to be communication. So pending board approval, we'll be ready for some communication to parents and to staff tomorrow. The way that we'd like to move forward is, as you heard, the first day would be an official snow day. And then the second day we'd call the personalized flex learning day, so that people were well prepared, knowing that on the second day that we would do it. Immediately after that, we'll get feedback from staff and from parents and from students to figure out how to go, what do we need to improve on, and then we'd have time to be able to improve that. We wouldn't have to then use the third day, but we could as a flex day. So I just want you to be confident that we want this to be highly successful for our students and our families and our staff, and we're committed to making sure that we get feedback after that first day to figure out what, if anything, we need to improve.
I guess I'm glad to hear that there'll be feedback after the first day. I'm wondering what the parents, the communication, we're going to do this is one thing, the communication, this is what we need from you and how we need you to work with us on it is another. So I guess the more communication to parents that you can give, and maybe more often as winter comes. Because telling them now, when they're in their busy schedules and it comes to December, they'll be completely off their radar. So the communication will be, to make this successful, will be a big deal.
We can certainly lean on some of our neighboring districts, as Superintendent Stallo mentioned. Farmington, Lakeville, and several others have been. Farmington's been doing this for a couple of years. Lakeville, I believe, is starting this year.
Jonathan?
Couple of different questions. One, I'm going to call on Lane because I'm kind of curious, student perspective. Were you a part of any of the days when the testing was going on? Have you in that pilot time, or how do you think students will react?
So I remember from one of the testing days, I had my math teacher post a video lesson, which is something she posts she would post every day. If kids are absent, then they could watch it. And I would say it was very similar to being in class. I mean, you got the same lesson, the same problems that you got in class, and then we had an assignment that was due the day we got back. And I thought it was successful. I think other students might not have been aware that that was expected of them to finish that. I know I had a few kids in my class be like, we had something to do over the testing days. But I think the majority of our class was effective with their time and was able to complete the assignments required of them.
Okay, helpful, thank you. How big of a concern do we have with regard to access? I mean, how many of our students are we concerned about being able to do that when they're at home?
A snow day throws a lot of regular routines up in the air. So a student may be at grandma's house instead of at their normal house where they may have access. So we're being very careful to assess it on the front end. And that's why we are, creating resources that can be sent home beforehand and several weeks beforehand, or ideally a little bit closer to the intended or expected inclement weather. So that is, we have some survey data that indicates, a percentage of students who may not have internet or device access at home, but we're being very, very intentional to plan for that. To essentially plan for students not having access to devices, and if they do, they would have an option to complete those assignments or those learning activities with the devices, with the access. But we're making certain that students do not need access or the device.
Thank you. My last question is for Dr. Stallo. Your peers who have been doing this, have they said it has any impact on their decision-making at 3 a.m?
Yes. And when we're together in the morning at 4 o'clock or 4:30, it is interesting because there is a little bit with some of the schools. Shakopee, Jordan's had it for a number of years. I don't know if it's easier for them to call off because it's hard always. Those are just really hard decisions. But I think that there is definitely a piece of, at least when I talked to the Shakopee superintendent, that the learning will continue. It'll be different. It's not going to be the exact same, and we know that nothing can replace that. But the alternative is to interrupt learning. So I think this is, we're gonna learn. Our parents are gonna learn. Our kids are gonna learn. Our staff are gonna learn. And I would love to think that we're gonna have a really mild winter and not have to worry about any of this. After last year, I'm really excited for us to have something else in place. To try, to see how it goes, to get feedback, to make sure we're improving. I don't think it's going to be difficult for our high school students or staff. I think it is because we have done some things. I think it's much more a natural part of what they do. I think at the elementary level, we're just going to really have to work that out and make sure that we're supporting staff and supporting families and having something that looks reasonable for a 6-year-old. So I'm excited for us to have the conversations, for principals to be working with their staff and teams to be working together to say what makes sense. So really want to empower our teachers to make great curricular decisions for our students like they do every day.
Any other questions, comments? Michael?
Just two really silly ones. Because we're learning as we go, say we have an ice storm and the power is out in half of the community. I mean, I assume we're just going to adjust and roll with all those things as they come up. And
in that case, you know what I would say? We're not having school. That's
Got
one
it.
of the things
Okay.
that I'm going to have to be really careful about. And that's why, pending board approval, the communication that will go out, the first communication that will go out to parents and staff, I would like us to say, first day, snow day like normal. Second day, we're going to do the personalized flex learning day. And then after that, depending on what's happening, we can always make that decision.
Sure.
In that case, that
That
would be
allows
one
us.
that we'd say, it's just gonna be a snow day. Forget the personalized flex. We don't want to put barriers up for that.
Right. Okay, thank you. And then another question, imagining kids are at home, say your 6-year-old is home and staying home with the 8th grader while mom and dad are at work. Will there be a way for that 6-year-old to, I can't imagine all 8th graders will sit down and help the 6-year-old navigate their personal learning, but if I had an 8th grader, I'd let my kids stay home while
It
I
could go the
manage
other way.
office. It could. You know what I'm saying? I assume that all is up to the discretion of the teachers who have a sense of what's really doable in those situations. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the personalized flex learning day?
So made.
By Stacy, second.
Second.
By Enrique. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
Thank you.
pursuing that. Move on to Youth Appreciation Week. I have a proclamation to read. Whereas the vast majority of youth are concerned, knowledgeable, and contributing partners within the community, and whereas the accomplishments and achievements of these young citizens deserves the recognition and praise of the community, and whereas Optimist International has since 1954 developed and promoted a program entitled Youth Appreciation Week, and whereas the citizens of Prior Lake Savage Area School District have indicated a desire to join the Optimists in expressing appreciation and approval of the contributions of youth, the District 719 Board of Education does hereby proclaim the second week of November as Youth Appreciation Week in the district. By this action, let it be known that we have faith in the ability of today's youth as they assume responsible roles in the future of mankind. Now therefore, I, Lee Shimmick, Chairperson of the Prior Lake Savage Area School Board of Education, hereby proclaim the second week of November 2019 as Youth Appreciation Week in the Prior Lake Savage Area School District. Okay. Then we'll move on to policy. This is the second and final reading of the policies. We went through these policies during our study session on September 23rd. They're both regarding transportation for public school students and non-public school. Jim, did you have anything to add to that?
No, just to recap, we changed formatting on 707 to match MSBA, and 708, there is no equivalent MSBA.
Okay.
No material changes to either policy.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve policies 707 and 708?
So made.
And
So moved.
Michael, second.
Second.
By Stacy. Any further comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Administrative reports, Dr. Stalo?
Thank you very much. At Prior Lake Savage Area Schools, our mission is to educate all learners to reach their full potential as contributing and productive members of our ever-changing global community. And tonight I'd like to highlight some of the work in which we've been engaged in order for that to happen. Bridges grand opening is coming up. We'll host a grand opening to celebrate the new Bridges ALC on Monday, October 21st at 3:30. We have a short program that'll be starting at 3:45, and then attendees will be able to enjoy some refreshments, take part in the ribbon cutting, and tour the building. In addition, the school year, we're planning some soft openings of some of the other learning spaces that will be coming online this year next. And of course, then we'll have the grand opening for Hamilton Ridge next year. As you know, we focus our district work on goals to increase student achievement, student engagement, and operational excellence. And as I've been in schools throughout the past few weeks, I'm seeing some evidence of a couple things that I'd just like to highlight. I've seen the work of our building instructional leadership teams and grade level staff and administrators using data to analyze student data for decision-making, goal setting, and improvement. The elementary math leadership team, consisting of grade level teachers from across the district, worked last week to continue to align Minnesota math standards to curriculum resources and common assessments. Teachers involved in the math leadership team are developing and piloting this work and will continue to improve it as it will be implemented by all elementary teachers next year. Middle school, I happened upon a meeting at the middle school last week also, where middle school math teachers were working with the principals and the Director of Assessment, Research, and Continuous Improvement, Chrislyn Goodman, to use MAP data to guide instructional decisions and to provide direction of how best to support our students. And then lastly, just to celebrate and highlight one of our important partnerships, I had a chance to connect with community during an Optimist meeting last week. Lee Shimmick and Jonathan were there. And I had a chance just to share gratitude for the support that they give our students and update them a little bit on our construction progress and some of the work of our priority work of the district. It's always fun to meet with this group. They're incredibly supportive of our students and celebrate the great work of our kids. Thank you.
Are there any other administrative reports? Okay, board reports. Michael, anything to report?
Just briefly, the community education program has their big Halloween party coming up on October 26th, so they've been working hard on that.
Melissa?
Southwest Metro meeting, but nothing to really report.
Okay, Jonathan?
Had a visit with Dr. Stalo at the high school a couple weeks ago. I saw Dr. Biezek's morning meeting with staff, and a social worker was talking about mandatory reporting laws and rules, and it just reminded me of yet one more thing we put on, one more responsibility that we put on our teachers that you don't think of. But other than that, we had a lot of fun participating in a discussion of current events with Mr. Carr and a conversation with students about their freedoms and the Bill of Rights with Mr. Gaudet. saw a lot of the new spaces and just, it's encouraging anytime you get a chance to see the classroom and see what's going on over there. And finally, would encourage all of us, if you are able, to attend that Optimus Luncheon, the celebration, or Youth Appreciation Week celebration. There are kids throughout the district, different buildings, all get recognized from first and second graders through high school kids. It's a neat event. Going there a couple of times as a parent is why I wound up joining the Optimus.
Stacy?
I'll talk about the Rotary. We were, you know, is that okay? I don't want to take your thunder.
Nope, you and I were
Okay.
there.
Last Wednesday, I think, very early in the morning for me. We, Lee and I went with a number of administrators from the district to the Prior Lake Rotary. We were invited by a number of members. They had Leah B. Olson, who currently, I know she's with the T-Wolves and she's with the Lynx, announcing and that kind of thing, and has been, was a U of M Gopher player too for a number of years. But she presented just a lot of information, just kind of her experience in youth athletics, and her signature new thing is Rethink the Win. So kind of in the crazy world of youth sports, you know, what kind of trends we're having right now, and you know, what role does it play, and so it was a very interesting conversation, and just with her experience and kind of where we're going with athletics and professionalizing them at all levels. So yeah, it was really neat. I know Beth was there, Beth Fuller, and Dan was there, so there was a number of people from the district, so it was good.
Well, FLRP, you all heard most of the updates, and I just want to thank Joan Heisey for sending out the minutes all the time to keep everybody up to date, so that's awesome. It's a request we'd made earlier in the year. And then I've been to a SCALE meeting, and we had a presentation on what they call First Stop Shop, and it has to do with bringing business to south of the river. And they have a goal of 50% of people that are employed to be working south of the river in this area. And we did a tabletop exercise on what's needed to get a business into the area, and a lot of it had to do with what we already have, what kind of amenities we have, and what we're ready for. So it's kind of interesting to see, you know, what businesses look at, and you know, schools is part of that. So it's kind of cool to see. And yeah, that's about it. Enrique?
No, I don't have anything.
Lainey? It's your turn finally.
So we're kind of, at the high school, we're coming to a close on our homecoming week, which was one of our biggest weeks of the year. On Monday we had, not this Monday, not last Monday, but the Monday before that, we had our pancake breakfast, which was really successful. We sold more pancakes than we'd had in the past. On Wednesday, we were supposed to have powder puff and powder poof, but it was really cold, and so powder puff got moved to last Wednesday. It got moved a week back. And then on Friday, we had our pep fest during the day, and then our game at night, obviously. And then on Saturday night, we had our dance, which was a complete success. We actually had around 2,000 tickets sold, which is the biggest attendance we've had in our high school's history. Maybe even the state of Minnesota's history. So that is a huge chunk of our student population, and it was really awesome to see everybody out and having fun together. So yeah, now we're just working on thanking everybody that makes it happen. So our attendance people, our janitors, people who make homecoming happen. So yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks for being here tonight, Lane.
Filling in.
Isabel is at the Masterworks concert tonight, so thank you so much for jumping on the opportunity to be here and representing students on the school board.
Absolutely.
Future events, October 16th through the 18th, there's no school, grades E through 12 for MEA. October 21st, no school, E12. October 28th is our next school board study session here at the DSC at 6 p.m. And October 31st is the end of the first quarter. I don't know of any other announcements. So I'll take a motion to close this meeting for a negotiation strategy.
So made.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. We're adjourned to go into closed session. Thank you all for attending this evening.